Casual Magic has been sponsored by Quiver, maker of the Quiver and Bolt deck cases and other fine deck holding accessories. Use the code CASUAL on their website for 10% off your order. We're also sponsored by Architect, the premier site for hosting your decks on the internet. I love them and they love me, and it seems like a good reason for you to use them. You can also support Casual Magic directly by going to our Patreon at patreon.com/ShivamB. And now, on with the show. Hello and welcome to Casual Magic, the show where we talk about the fun side of Magic together. My name is Shivam Bhatt, and Casual Magic is brought to you by Architect and Quiver and by my patrons at patreon.com/ShivamB. Today, I have a guest that I've been trying to talk to since she was in elementary school. And I'm very, very grateful and happy to finally get the chance to have Dana Fischer, the child prodigy of all Magic and probably a much better player than, let's say, 80% of you guys listening, and her dad, Adam, who was a better player than a lot of us 25 years ago or something. Maybe not as much these days, but I'm super stoked and super excited to have you on my show because I've literally watched you grow up in Magic, and like so many of us have, and it's just great to see that you're finally sentient enough to talk.
Thank you. Although as my dad, I'm sure could relate to, I was talking for a long time and a little too much when I was younger.
It's true.
So like, this is wild, right? Because you're, as a recording, you're going to be 14 in a week, like you told me, which is great. You're finally old enough to play Magic by yourself now.
What happened a year ago?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's 13 plus, not 14. But the thing that's wild to me, and like, I realize this is just the biggest cliche in the world to start with, but you've been playing Magic for a stupidly long percentage of your life. Like, it feels like
I have been playing Magic since I was 3.5.
Like, what? So, I'm a dad, right? My son is 10 years old. I've watched his development his whole life. At 3.5 years old, my son was not going to be reading a Magic card. He was going to be eating a Magic card, maybe.
I did not read Magic cards. I looked at the picture, and my dad told me what the picture did.
Okay, so maybe this is an Adam question right now, because I need to know, dude, what the hell were you thinking, and how did you do this?
Well, this is where I have to relate it, because you don't really remember the early days directly.
No, I don't. I was 3.5.
Yes. The first step was progressing past the point of eating the cards. That was definitely the first step. No, so Magic's always been a big part of my life. I've been playing since 94. I played with friends. I played on the Pro Tour a little bit. It was just a big part of just socially and intellectually and all that. And so, I was looking forward to sharing that experience with my kids. I have an older daughter. She is 16. And I sort of started showing her when she was 4. And she played for a little bit, and she, knows how to play. She decided she had other interests that were a little bit more of her focus.
Sure.
But when we were playing, Dana would watch and she'd look. And even when Dana was like 2.5, she'd look kind of interested when she wasn't sucking her thumb. Sorry, Dana.
Look, I mean, that's what we're here for, right? If thumbs are not meant to be sucked by children, what's the point?
Exactly. So what we did, I remember very specifically when she was 3.5, although almost 4, it was Father's Day, 2014. And I was like, okay, this would be a good day to like spend a day together and like, with my kids and, start teaching Dana how to play Magic. And I'd had a little experience with my older daughter, Sadie. But, Sadie was a little bit closer, a little bit older, a little bit closer to reading at the time. Dana was nowhere near reading.
Sure.
And so we're like, okay, let's create like a 30 card deck, I think it was, with just like 6 or 7 different cards, all very vanilla. And Dana was very into the memory games, like, the match memory games.
Sure.
So we kind of treated it like that in terms of memorizing which card went with which art. And it was similar.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's kind of like somebody plays like a Magic in a foreign language.
Yeah.
Which came in handy much later.
It sure did.
And so we did it via memory and just really basic stuff. And I tell parents this all the time when they ask about how do you know when a child's ready or when is too young. And it's not about reading or math or strategic thinking. It's about willingness to sit still and focus.
Right.
And Dana had already shown that by looking at like when I was playing with Sadie. And so she was at that point, and that really was the most key aspect of knowing that she was ready, is she was willing to kind of put in the effort and focus on that and sit still for half hour at a time.
Yeah, that's the thing I've noticed with my own son. He's got an interest in the cards. He loves looking at them, collecting them. He's very happy to take foils and fill binders and all the things. But when it comes down to actually playing the game, like I and my son both share ADHD, and we have a lot of focus issues. Now, for me, Magic, I've been doing this for 30 years, so I've got the focus and attention to be able to play. But for my kid, he tapers off or gets bored or wants to do something else, or if it's not going his way, he's still an elementary school child. He's still got that, like, if I'm losing, I don't want to play anymore type of thing. And I'm like, we're working on that because good sportsmanship is important. But like, that's the thing that stuns me is the first time I run into Dana and or see her at a tournament or something like that. And I'm like, this child has a preternatural ability to actually, I don't possess that kind of discipline in my 30s, let alone in my 3s.
Yeah. No, it's just how she, looked at things and approached things and what she wanted to do. And that was what she wanted to do. And even, again, when, she was 6 and playing an entire, GP on, was it 10 hours, something like that. And, so it was just like that.
I cannot believe that, no, and I've seen it. I've seen it with my own eyes, and I still don't believe. I don't know how you sit through a whole tournament at such a young age. It is hard for old people to do that. We get tired. We get very frustrated, or just fatigued, or just mentally drained from 8 hours of Magic in a row. Playing at a tournament, playing at FNM is already it's not hard, but it's not easy. But playing at a GP where everybody wants to win, nobody's pulling punches, and everyone wants to kill you is rough. So okay, first off, before we get there, I need to know, how did you decide that elves were going to be your thing? Because they're also my thing. So I am very much a kindred spirit here. And for as long as I've known you, you have been the embodiment of elves.
Honestly, I'm not entirely sure. I mean, pretty much since I was born, I've loved green. Green has been my favorite color since I can remember what colors are. And I also, I don't know why, but elves just spoke to me because I've always been a very small child. Very small, even for my age. I'm the shortest person in all of my classes.
That's fair.
And so I just have the small genes. And to me, elves felt like little tiny creatures, felt close enough to being me. That's where I loved them.
Go ahead. And just to fill in some of the blanks, because some of it is from when Dana is a little young to remember.
Infantile, yeah, right.
But that's pretty much it. I think the approach with both Dana and Sadie was what do they like about Magic cards? What speaks to them? And for Dana, it was the color green, and it was these small creatures. And you like the art, you like kind of some of the gameplay, because we played around with a couple different decks. And that's what you just gravitated towards. For my older daughter, Sadie, it was white and angels and flying creatures. And so that's what she played with. So it's about what kind of they identified with that made it fun.
Yeah. My son came to me and he was like, Papa, I want to build a Phyrexian deck. And I was like, oh God, what have I done wrong?
Okay, this is a Phyrexian. I'll allow it.
Yeah, it's what you couldn't give dragons. I can deal with dragons. Let's go dragons all day long. Phyrexians, really?
Maybe he's expressing that side of himself elsewhere because it's very different from him. There you
weird
go.
Cryptid monster thing. Well, the problem was we opened together in my collector booster from All Will Be One or whatever. He cracked a pack that had the Junji Ito foil mega turbo stamped Elish Norn and was like, "That's it. I'm in. We're going crazy." I'm like, buddy. Let's pause for a second. We're not going to poison deck right away. I want people to play with you again. But so Dana, what was it like? Like, did you guys start going to FNMs, or how did you get to a GP? Like, how did you get to the ability? I guess, how did you guys feel like she was ready to play in a GP at all? Because like I don't feel ready to play in a GP.
So I have to apologize. Once we get to age like 7 or so, I think
I understand. Like that's what I was telling you, Adam. I'm like, there's a lot of groundwork here that she's not going to remember.
So we started just playing at home, and that's what we did until Dana was basically 5, I think. Yes, 5. And then there was a Grand Prix in San Diego. And I think this is actually, I can't remember if we did like FNMs and stuff before this, but this might have been the first one. But there was a Grand Prix in No, this was the first one. There was a Grand Prix in San Diego. I believe it was in 2015 when Dana was
just
5.
Turned 5. It was August 2015.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's when it was. We could verify that, I'm sure. But yes, August 2015 is what I remember as well. And there were 2-headed giant events there. And we're like, oh, why don't I go there for a day and play with Sadie for a day in a 2-headed giant event? She was still playing at the time, and play with Dana for a day in a 2-headed giant event. And so that's what we did. And that was kind of the first sort of out of the house experience, I believe.
August 9th, 2015.
There you go. Okay.
Won by Michael Majors.
Thank you for verifying. And, it was just like a 2-headed giant side event, and it was local, so it was nice. But Dana in particular loved the experience, and she liked kind of, being there around the people. Also, it didn't hurt. A lot of people gave you like their free bulk, and you thought it was the coolest thing ever. And so it was just, really cool. And so after that is, I believe, when we started going to like local events. It took a few more months for you to be able to be okay playing independently.
Yeah.
But you got there. You were just starting to read at the time.
Yeah.
So that was crazy. A lot.
That's so crazy.
Knowing other cards, what they did. And then we went to Grand Prix Los Angeles in May 2016. And that was, we're like, all right, let's talk about this. Do you want to play on your own now? You've been playing in local stores on your own. And when I say like on her own, I was still helping with like shuffling and tracking life and some of that kind of stuff.
I could not hold the deck. I could not hold, 10 cards.
Yeah.
Your hands were so small then. I remember, and I'm just like,
they still are.
What are you doing?
Yeah, it was a little crazy. But yeah, so we said, okay, and we're just planning some side events, not like the big event. And you played in a few side events. Mm-hmm. And there was one where you were playing against a little boy who was, older than you by a lot, but he was probably like 12 or something like that. I remember. And that was something that was like really, kind of a cool experience, although he was, a little bit taken aback that this much younger kid was playing against him. He was probably the second youngest at the event. But it was just at a side event, and it was really cool. The parents are like, or I think the parents were like, I don't know who to root for.
Yeah, right.
Then you played against, I think, a teacher. And I think her husband was like, I don't know whether to root for my wife or this little girl who's playing here and all that kind of stuff. But it was just all fun, casual side events at that point. And then, so that was like the first, I think, true experience.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
really?
Shivam.
No, because I'm just thinking, like, I think I was at that GP. I think
you might have been.
Yeah, because GP 2016. Okay, so hang on one second. I'm going to give you some personal lore here. So that happened in May of 2016. Because I remember at that Grand Prix, that was a Grand Prix that I showed up at, like, because I met up with, that was one of the first Grand Prix I'd ever gone to that was like outside of like Oakland or whatever here. And I'd met up with like Josh Lee Kwai and Jimmy Wong because they were doing the first Command Zone meetup where it was like 7 of us, which is funny to think about now. A Command Zone meetup is going to be like thousands of people. But it was like, a handful of us playing in a small pod together, and like they took us out to dinner afterwards. But I remember, was that the one she made day 2? No, it wasn't, right?
No.
I did not play
oh my
the
God.
main event.
She wasn't even in the main event at that point.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So I remember what it was because I think we met up at Riot where my co-host of Commander and Phil was working at the time.
Yes.
And we were playing like Commander, and I remember that you had like an Elves deck that was like this big and steamrolled all of us. Because I remember this because like you came up and ran and gave me a big tackle hug at the time, which was the first time we'd actually met, but we'd done a podcast together with on Commander, and I was like,
Yes.
oh, it's a small child who's hugging me. Okay, well, I'm a dad. I understand how to do this.
Yep.
But it was like one of the first times we'd ever actually met, and that was that was a really cool event because that ended up being one of the events that brought me to where I am here today. Because I ran into who's the woman who used to run all the tournaments, the French one.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
I don't remember her name, but she was absolutely lovely, and she invited me to come to PAX that year because that was the year Kaladesh was coming out, and then that rolled into like all the rest of everything.
Yes, I do remember Kaladesh was my first pre-release.
Right.
Now there was something else at that event that's notable because Ashlyn Rose was cosplaying at that event, and she was cosplaying as Nissa. And I don't know if you remember this now or just remember I told you about it later. But Dana was not 100% sure whether it was the real Nissa or whether it was somebody cosplaying as this. I think you were kind of leaning towards, yes, it was somebody cosplaying, but you wanted to believe it was the real Nissa.
I mean, I was 5, so.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Being 5 years old. It's definitely like you're on the cusp of either of like between reality and what you don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Because a couple of years before that, we were at Disney World. And you were 3.5, and they were all real then. That I know. Everybody was real. All the characters at Disney World.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. So for you're a child and a costumed character is there, obviously they're going to be the real one, right? Like you're in Magic Town. Everybody's playing Magic. Why wouldn't it be Nissa?
Right. Exactly. So yeah. So it was it was a good time there, and then Dana had said, she's really excited and wanted to do more of those. And there was one coming up in Portland in August, I believe, of 2016.
Yep.
And we went up there, and Dana played in the main event there. So that was her first main event Grand Prix that she played in. It was a little bit rough, but that one was a huge learning experience. There's lots of things that the event staff was incredibly helpful. I was super nervous about like being in, sitting still for that long and in the event and how it would work and all that kind of stuff. And that's where, for instance, we learned that she could get a fixed seat, and that was a thing.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's going to help.
Yeah.
So, so that was actually in the early days.
Yeah, I did not play that whole event.
No, that's fair. For the original GPLA, right?
Rounds, 2016? Maybe, I want to say.
Yeah.
Something like that, which is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, because now, like, you guys made me I sat there and I went back through some of my old tweets from 2016 to just see where I was. And yeah, that GPLA was the first real GP I had gone to as a member of the Commander community, as a member of the person who was like their Commander focus.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and so like that was a really important event for me personally. And and I got to meet you guys there because like I think the GP where you actually started really popping off was it GPLA in 2018?
Yeah.
Afterward? Yeah, because that's when at that point we were already friends and established, which was cool. Yeah, man, that's so sick though, because like I'm just remembering like all like those years were so deeply meaningful to me as a person in terms of just like community and stuff. And I keep reading stories about you, just everybody like, Daily MTG would be writing stories about, look at Dana Fischer, she's like the youngest player ever. And you're just like steamrolling people. But Dana, I have a question for you. You got known for playing Elves decks all the time. And I'm also an Elves modern player. That's like my true love. But did you ever get tired of the fact that everybody would immediately know how to sideboard against you?
I did somewhat, and it was also frustrating, but because in game 1 they would even like keep hands that were more tailored towards elves instead of just what they didn't know what, like, or instead of just like a hand that's generally good because you don't know what you were playing against. Right. So eventually I decided in modern that I would not play elves, and I made the decision to switch to dredge. And so I practiced that, kind of kept it on like the down low, just like I'll show up to an event and play dredge and in modern instead of elves. And it ended up going pretty well. and I caught some people off guard. Like I played a PTQ, and they're like, I kept a hand that was just like a bunch of lands and a damnation because it was going to be good at the elves. And then I played dredge, and I just steamrolled them because they get a hand that was for elves, not for dredge. They didn't expect dredge. And I wanted to play a deck that still had some amount of green in it.
That's fair.
And so dredge had green in it, and so I played dredge. And I actually got a feature match for that event, and even on and I've had my fair share of feature matches by this point.
That's crazy, by the way.
Yeah, and so so they started out, and it said elves as my deck, and then I played like a Bloodstained Mire, and I remember I watched it back, and Marshall Sutcliffe was just like, "What is Bloodstained Mire doing in an elf deck?" Wait, Faith was looting, and Marshall was so confused because I didn't tell him beforehand, and that was like my whole plan.
That's so good. I love that so much. Oh my god, I could just see them sitting there going like, "That's not an Elvish Mystic. What the hell? What are you? That's a Vengevine. I don't understand. What's going on?"
that video may be out there. I'll have to try to find if it is.
Oh, that sounds delightful. That's so fun. So, having now played through a handful of GPs and stuff, what is the experience like for you? Like, when you go to a GP, like, do people come up to you? Because I know you guys have like a fixed spot at a table. What is the experience like for you now as the famous Dana Fischer who goes to play elves and these things?
I mean, it's pretty cool. I have to admit, I have not played elves in a competitive tournament in a very long time.
Elves haven't been competitive in a very long time either, so
I plan on making Muttered Elves work now with Priestess Titania and Wirewood Symbiote. I will be hopefully playing that at Gen Con for one of the RCQs there. And but honestly, like, I mean, GPs don't happen anymore.
Sure. Well, I mean, I don't mean GPs, but like just events, Magic Cons, whatever.
I mean, it's definitely really cool, like, especially at Amsterdam. Like, I had some meet and greets before, but it had been, like, pretty slow going. There were, like, a few people, and it was cool. But Amsterdam was where it was really like, oh my god, there are so many people here that want to see me. Like, I just wanted to play competitively. Like, I'm just someone who wanted to play Magic and do well. And all of a sudden, there's all these people who want to come up and meet me.
Amsterdam was the first time that I really had that feeling as well, where people are just like, I listened to you in like Estonia or in Finland or in Turkey or in, outer Mongolia. I'm like, what? What are you doing? Isn't like a European told me, it's like in the States, for instance, we all show up at like all these events all the time. We're kind of old hat. People know who we are. In Europe, we never come. Like us internet types don't show up to Europe at all. It's far away. It's hard to get to. So
and there's not as many events there.
Right. So going there and showing up is like, for them, maybe the only chance I'll ever get to meet somebody like us. And it's insanely cool for them. And for us, we're just like, they capped the line. I don't understand. How many people were me? Really? It's such a great feeling. It's so much fun. But God, so you've grown up in this game effectively here, which is insane to us. Because, like, first off, Magic players are very salty and do not use the cleanest language of all time when they're playing games, especially when they're getting skull crushed by a little child. And so, but I know you've built a lot of friendships, and a lot of people are just like Olivia, for instance, will go around and tear people's limbs off if they mess within the Dana bubble.
Yep. Although my dad, after meeting Olivia, was when my dad really made the decision to not shield me from the foul language that Magic players had.
Because that's not a strategy that works.
Because otherwise it would be, because like Olivia, she has pretty colorful language, which is fine. But also, like, being 7 years old was when my dad had to like make the decision, like, is it okay? And just like tell me to not repeat it, and then I just hang out with them.
I think it was a combination of her using such colorful language while still being such a great person. I'm like, all right, the one can be managed. It's more important that like Dana get to hang out with people like Olivia, and that people like Olivia feel comfortable. Like, and again, there are, Pleasant Kenobi, Tappy. There are others in the community that sometimes And
Olivia was definitely one of the first.
Yes. And so at that point, I talked to my wife about it as well. It's like, you know what? Dana is going to hang out around adults saying adult things and doing adult things that are perfectly appropriate among other adults. And she'll just know how, we'll be very open with her and know how to handle it. And whether that is colorful language or drinking or, other things like that, she'll just kind of know that's adults doing adult things for adults and not for her.
Luckily, the adults that you guys tend to hang out with are also have enough wherewithal to at least behave somewhat around children, not in a weirdo way. Because, like, I mean, I'm glad that you at least hang out with them, like not hang out, but I'm glad that you're there to give Dana like support in this sort of thing. Because, like, I'm not here to tell Olivia what to do because I also know that she's one of the best people in our community, just flat out.
She's fantastic. No
I
question.
love her.
Like between Olivia and Tappy, it's like there's nobody I would trust with my child more. If I was like, I need somebody to watch this kid, and they're like, okay, Auntie Brigade, we're gonna go. It'll work. But it's like, so part and parcel with that is sometimes it gets a little rough and tumble, and it's like, okay, fine. But they're not going to put like, they're not going to put booze into your apple juice. It'll be fine.
No. Of course not.
Like, of course not. Because like, but Magic players are going to Magic play, right? Like,
Yeah.
So what, like, as you've been playing through these tournaments over the years and stuff, obviously you've gotten to know like all the big players over time because everybody wants to see the magnificent Dana do like magic tricks. But so what has it been like? Like, do they talk? Like, I'm assuming early on they were probably pretty patronizing or condescending, but what's it like these days?
I mean, people honestly are more somewhat like I have more reach and there's a lot more people who know of me. So most of the players I play against know who I am and are more like expecting to lose and intimidated a lot of the time because they just like have seen all my tournament success. And
You're
so
good.
and so instead of, being like, oh, there's this little girl, then they're more like, okay, I gotta actually watch out. And I think this happened maybe more in casual tournaments, but maybe there were, and I can't say for sure because I don't really remember, and I probably wouldn't have picked up on it either. Of like, maybe people did not want to just like beat me as hard as they can or something, but now they're like, there's no fear.
It was interesting.
My dad used to let me win, and now now it's hard for him to win.
Yeah, we won't talk about the pre-release record.
Yeah, apparently I believe, and I believe the past 6 pre-releases I've beat him 6-0.
That's the way it should be. That's how it should be.
Yes, and you do have more day 2s than me.
I do, and more RCs.
As of yet, I have more Pro Tours, but it was easier back then to qualify.
So much easier.
So there is that. And I'm sure you will pass me at that point. It's before long. But it was interesting, Shivam, seeing the progression from people underestimating her and being like, wait a second, it's not really, is she really playing, Magic? She's really going to play Magic? Or is it like they're playing together or whatever? And then, like, oh, wait, she is really playing and like, oh, wow, is she actually any good? And the whole underestimating to going to the overestimation stage, over the course of, several years, obviously.
Yeah, sometimes people will like say, oh, yeah, that's the kid who's made the Pro Tour. I'm like, not quite, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm surprised you haven't hit the PT yet. Like, have we done any PTQs in a while? Like,
honestly, they don't. The system has changed so much, but after the pandemic, because you have to go to the RC and then do well at the RC to qualify for the PT.
Yeah, she, with the prior system, we had been getting into that, and she was kind of making some progress, but then, when she was 9, essentially, all that went away. And so there was like several years where that didn't exist. And now in the new system, it just works very different.
It's very complicated. It's like even pros I know are just like, what is going on? How do we get into the PT anymore? But it's just like, and obviously it's not easy to do. You still have to beat all these people in the RT and the RTQ and the whatever it is. And then I guess, the regional championships are also very tough competition. Like those are pretty high level stuff.
Everyone's playing in them has to have qualified to play in it.
So what formats do you like to play these days?
I definitely like a lot of the limited formats. Right now, Pioneer would probably be my favorite. But I'll honestly play any of the competitive formats, like whatever the RCQ season is, then I'll play that format.
Fair.
Or the upcoming RC. So I've definitely been focused a lot on Pioneer, and I'm starting to get a little more into Modern now with MH3 and the RCQ seasons becoming Modern.
It's interesting. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just going to talk about how irritated I am that Modern would go ahead and give us Wirewood Symbiote and Priest of Titania and still have friggin' Bowmaster around. And I'm like, come on, man. I'm one toughness here. Give me a break.
Well, that's because Wirewood Symbiote does help. Because then if they try to Bowmasters your priest, then you can use Wirewood to bounce the priest, and they have to hit the Wirewood first. And then you play Agatha's Soul Cauldron and prevent them from doing any of that.
Oh, right. Soul Cauldron. Yeah, I have not looked at the builds with Soul Cauldron yet because that card is messed up. That is a Nutter Butters card.
I would like all my elves to become Priest of Titanias.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Let's go.
So what's interesting about formats you mentioned, Shivam, because I've seen also the progression over the years. At the start it was like whatever, you didn't really know too much, and then Dana did a 2HG event with a friend of hers, who we're still friends with, kid, about 4 years older, and they won a 2HG event. They went like 4-0 and got a whole bunch of prize tickets, and that's when. We got, actually for both of us, to be honest, our first commander decks. We got like a set of the commander decks there at the prize wall.
The 2017 precons.
Yeah, I think those were it. But like Edgar Markov, I think was there.
Yeah, with the Eminence.
Yeah. And we tried that out, and for a while, for I think like over a year, Commander is what you would say your favorite format was.
Yeah.
And she loved playing Commander, and still does. But like, that was like, getting together with people and playing and for fun. That was your favorite format. And when you were asked that question, that's what you would say. Although I think while you still really like Commander, and do very much enjoy it, I think you've kind of swung back around a little bit towards competing and qualifying and whatever the format is at the time. And the competition is sort of more your focus.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah. And I also, I like playing Commander, but for me, it's more of, I'll play Commander when I go to a convention and play with friends and play on the Commander shows, but I won't just like go to my local shop and play Commander night.
That's a good point. Right. It's much more about playing with friends than playing the game and the format itself and with strangers.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of how I approach it too. It's like I'll play Commander with like my friends or at cons or stuff, but at like if I'm going to the game store, I want to draft. I want to play limited, or actually, honestly, that's it. I want to draft. I want to draft all the time. So that's kind of what I'm going to be doing. And like speaking of Commander, I've always wondered because I play Elves in every format except Commander. Commander is the one place where I just don't do Elves deck because when I've tried, I've realized it's been very linear. It plays the same way every time. It becomes big elf ball and you just slam it and win. Or with the Lathriel deck, it's even just like even easier to just crush people with. And I don't find that to have like when I'm playing 60 card Magic, I don't mind that there's like redundancy and I'm getting the same effects in the combos because I want to win. I want my combos to show up. In 100 card, I want it to be more chaotic, not chaotic, but more at least I want each of the 100 cards to feel different enough. Right. And like when you're playing Elves in Commander, it feels like every card is kind of interchangeable. And so, like, what do you think? Like, I know that you had one. Do you still have an Elves deck?
I do still have my Elves deck. It was actually my first custom built Commander deck that someone made for me. So I still have it. I updated it. And I do like playing it, but it's more of like, I do feel that like sometimes it just ramps too much and then you combo out.
Yeah.
But I also like how sometimes there's the card draw style of Elves because I have a lot of Elves that like draw cards, and I have Beast Whisperer, or there's just like the ultra ramp into pumping Azari with a lot.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's just not what I'm quite looking for out of a Commander game, but that's, I don't know. It's sometimes like when I want to win, I'll pull out in my Elves deck and just be like, let's go. Elf ball all day long. Especially like the green black Elves is just super. There was that one from Origins that comes to play and does damage for each elf you have in play, and I'm like, that's the way you win. That's my goal.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Shaman of the Pack.
Yes, I love that card so much.
I won so many Grand Prix matches with that card by cocoing into 2 of them and shooting my opponent for 30.
I still remember, like, it was. Do you remember? I think it was against Tron, and it was when you cashed your first GP. When you did your first cash finish at a GP.
Yeah.
Do you remember that, Dana?
Yeah. So they had like the Karn, the Great Creator, and they had I forget the name of the card in their sideboard that turns everything into an artifact.
Lattice?
Yeah. Something like that. It was like it turned all cards into an artifact.
Yep.
And that card was on the stack. And I think my opponent was at 1 or 2.
Oh no.
And they had just cast All as Dust, but I had 4 mana and a Coco. So with the spell on the stack, I cast a Coco, got 2 Shaman of the Packs to deal lethal.
Let's go!
I know. It was pretty funny.
Oh my god, that Tron guy must have been so salty. Oh, I love that so much. Like, there's something about killing somebody when the win is on the stack for them that is just so good. You feel like you just stole, like you straight up stole the egg out of their nest, and they're just like, what the hell just happened? I had played the win. It's not even it was in my hand. It was in the stack. 10 seconds. So good. So how do you balance doing all these tournaments and like travel and stuff with schooling? Because that's one of the things that we as old people don't necessarily have to deal with. Right? Like, we have work and stuff, but it's not the same as like, I have to take a standardized test next week or whatever,
Yeah, Dana. How do you do that?
Honestly, it has been, I mean, I've only been in elementary and middle school, so skipping school, and it has been a lot easier because the middle school grades, they don't actually count towards college.
No, they don't count towards really anything.
They don't care what your grades were. And honestly, I was learning enough from Magic that like school was still pretty easy for me at this stage. I mean, I'm entering high school now, and so I am being more careful. Like when I travel to events, how can I leave at the latest point possible so I could miss as little of school as possible? And sometimes I will be studying for a test or doing homework on the plane rides to and from the event, or if we're driving, like going to Vegas because it's not that far to drive. It's totally drivable. I'll be like doing my homework in the car with my.
It's going to be more interesting when you get to like high school and you have to start writing essays or doing like longer math problems and things like that. But I mean, we all played Magic in high school. If we could do it, so can you. It shouldn't. It's the idea of trying to like balance this is just very daunting to me. Because it's hard even now as an adult with a family and life and stuff to be able to like, oh, I'm going to Vegas, I'm going to Amsterdam, I'm going to Vegas again, I'm going to, all these events and stuff. And my wife is like, so you're traveling this weekend again, are you? And I'm like, yes. Yeah.
That's kind of how my mom sometimes is too. Is like, we're just traveling so much, but we're not. We try to not go like. We try to just stick to the West Coast because flights are easier unless there's a really good reason to go farther. Like Amsterdam, I didn't have school. We got to take a whole family vacation out of it, and we were gone for like 5.5 weeks, just going around Europe.
See, that's a proper family vacation. At least that's cool.
Yeah. And although the rest of our family jokes that like all of our big vacations are planned around Magic events, which is not completely false.
But at least it gives us a direction of where to go, because otherwise we're like, well, we want to plan a vacation. Where do we go?
Yes.
I mean, look, Amsterdam is really pretty.
Yeah, exactly. And most of the trip had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
But, of course, there was like, we found ourselves in Athens and it happened to be pre-release weekend. So let's go to
events. Yeah, let's go to pre-release.
Oh my God. Dude, when I got to Amsterdam, the first day I landed there, which was 3 days before the show or whatever, my friend Danny drove us to Germany to buy a bunch of MH3 German packs, and we were like drafting at midnight. I was like 40 hours awake, and we're drafting Modern Horizon 3 in German. And that's like, you were talking about memory earlier and learning the cards. I'm like, I'm glad I grinded a lot of this on Arena because I would be so lost right now.
Oh yeah.
Modern Horizons is not an easy game.
Yeah. Playing Modern Horizons pre-release in Greece, though, they don't print cards in Greek, so they had to be in English, and people spoke enough English.
Oh yeah,
but
was that cool?
I went to Grand Prix Lyon in February of 2018. And a lot of the cards were in like French, Spanish, Italian.
It was a modern tournament.
It was a modern tournament, but I still knew like what the cards did because
you know what a burn deck does, right? Like if it's like a shock or it's le shock, it's going to be the same thing.
Yeah. There's only one card I think where you had to ask.
The entire Grand Prix.
Yeah,
that's crazy though. Like going to France in 2018, you must have been 8 years old or something, 7 years old.
7. I was 7.
You know, I've traveled more than most people. I've been traveling internationally since I was like 3 years old because like my family follows a guru. It's like a spiritual leader, and he goes around the world and gives like 9-day long kind of like religious lectures and stuff. And so when I was a kid, and even now, we would plan our vacations around where's the next lecture going to be, and then spend a week or two either direction in whatever country that was. So I got to go to like Russia and Germany and like Bali and Japan, all these things. Like for my whole life, I've been able to travel all over the place. So I understand what it's like to travel and be like, oh yeah, by the way, this weekend we're going to be playing Magic here, but we're also going to be going and seeing all the other things right here.
Yeah,
it's a vacation.
And actually, Shivam, this Friday is, you want to say what's happening this Friday, Dana?
This Friday, I am taking my first solo flight to go to Dallas-Fort Worth for the Lorcana tournament.
Wow. My first solo flight was when I was like 8 years old, flying across the country. They put me in first class and gave me ice cream. It was really cool. But
I want ice cream.
Yeah, I don't think they do that anymore. They don't give you food, let alone ice cream. Like water costs money, man. Come on. But yeah, that'll be fun. Like,
and then one of the things I would actually say, so we're talking favorite format. Does cube drafting actually fit the bill?
Cube drafting is everybody's favorite format.
Yeah. So we're going to CubeCon for in October, which we're very excited about. And we are going there on Wednesday night. We're flying out. That one, we did this whole thing of all the events for the rest of the year about how many days of school it requires to miss. And that one was 2.5.
Yeah,
which was
that's a lot.
But it was worth it.
Yeah.
So we're leaving Wednesday night. My older daughter, Sadie, has an ice skating competition on that Saturday. So I'm flying back Friday. Dana is going to be there on her own. She's staying with Anna Margaret.
Yeah.
So
fair.
That's covered. But there was a huge thing about how does she get back from Wisconsin?
Because a lot of the airlines now, they have a lot of different restrictions on flying alone. Like I know Southwest and Southwest is 12, Alaska is 13, but all the other major ones are 15, and I'll be 14, not 15. So there's a lot of restrictions. And because I want to take a later flight, because it's the Sunday, I want to stay to as much of the event as possible. They will not do unaccompanied minor for the last connection of the day.
Oh no.
So we were like, okay, how do we like make this work? And we ended up finding a good Southwest option going from Milwaukee. I'll actually drive back to Milwaukee with Tappy.
Tappy's giving me a ride, which is super nice.
Back to Milwaukee. She'll drop me off at the airport, and then I'll fly, have a connection in Phoenix, and then come home.
But we did have to figure out what if she misses her Phoenix connection. So we have a backup plan of 2 people we know at Phoenix that will make sure Dana spends the night okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm getting parent anxiety thinking about that.
And also, what's really weird is my dad flew to France on his own when he was my age.
Yeah, well, you know what? The times were different when we were kids. Like we got to we got to get away with things that would not, let's say, fly today.
Yeah.
Oh my God, dude. I remember as a kid, like flying solo to like India or something. That's like, there's no way in hell somebody's going to let you go on a plane by yourself for 24 hours to the other side of the world. That is literally not going to happen. Your parents would be thrown in jail, let alone like the airlines even letting you on the flight. Yeah, dude, but you've done this so much that you know how to go through security and sit down on a plane chair and just wait 4 hours to land somewhere else. It's not the end of the universe. And
No.
I trust you can read at least airport signs. So it shouldn't be
Yes.
too bad. They're all in English here, at least.
The real question is the internet good enough to allow Arena to be played?
Hell no. I have tried. It is not, even if it is, it's just trying to play on a phone. Like some people manage to do it. I have not figured it out. My thumbs are too big maybe to try to do that.
Well,
Maybe
I
the
mean, I
pussy
actually have
hands.
a tablet, so
Oh,
it's
fair.
bigger.
So
I
yeah,
can
tiny
do
hands,
Arena
big
on the
tablet. You
phone.
can go away.
Yeah.
you can get it all day long. Man, Arena. I think having Arena on my phone, I did it for like 2 months and I realized this is bad for me. This is bad. Like this is how all of my money is going to disappear into the ether. So I took it off because otherwise it would just, I don't need that haunting me everywhere I go. So I play Pokemon Go instead. But
Oh, we did a lot of that.
yeah.
It depends on the airline. Sometimes the internet will work and sometimes it won't.
So what else do you do with your life? Because you can't just do Magic, right? Like you need to have a well-rounded college like application, which means that, and I'm not sure that playing Magic is going to quite count, though. Like apparently it's good enough for a vice president nominee. So, um, have you got any other extracurricular activities going on?
I used to, especially when I was younger and like school wasn't as tough. I was involved in a lot more extracurriculars. I played soccer. I did multiple forms of dance. I
Okay,
did
good.
ice skating. So I did a lot of that. But once I got older, I kind of got to the point where in any of those activities, if I really wanted to like keep doing them, I had to go competitive. And
That's fair.
I just could not support going competitive in multiple things. Like I'm already busy with doing competitive Magic, like traveling and doing competitive soccer
Yeah.
on the weekends or doing competitive ice skating competitions, which is what my sister does. And I did not want to wake up at 6 a.m. every morning to go to the ice rink because I'm a gamer and I sleep till 9 or 10. and
Oh, go ahead, Dana.
And so, I mean, honestly, at the moment, not really. Like, there's other things like I'll do, but it's more
I
just
mean, it doesn't matter till high
I'm
school,
at
anyways.
school. Yeah, I'm gonna do school and I'm gonna do Magic, and honestly, all the stuff like being involved in Magic for so long, colleges I think will look at that as a positive.
Yeah.
We're actually deep in the college search for my older.
Oh yeah, that's fair.
Because she's entering her senior year in high school, so she's about to start applying to colleges. So we've been talking to some college counselors and all that, and mostly about that. But I have spoken to a few about Dana's situation, and they generally agree that Dana's like involvement in Magic, and because it's been so consistent for so long, and it's really a big focus,
and it's
is actually sort of plenty. And she doesn't necessarily need the other stuff unless she wants to.
And it's not like you lack any accomplishments there or I mean, you've gone around the world, you've learned all sorts of things. You could probably write a pretty good essay just out of your Magic experience, I think. Like, I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. We have, though, I mean, you have intentionally made some choices about classes both ways in high school, right?
Yeah, like some of my classes, I have intentionally taken classes that would more support being absent once or twice a month to make it easier going to the tournaments because like it helps. Like I'm taking American Sign Language instead of Spanish because I met the teacher that teaches it and she was like, oh yeah, it's not a problem, all our lessons are on video, whereas some of the Spanish teachers, they're more hardcore and you have to do a lot more studying. And so I very purposely chose that, or I did not take the advanced English route. I'm just doing the advanced math route.
You did skip a year of math, though.
I did do that, yes.
That's very tactical.
Taking calculus in 10th grade.
I mean, mind you, the fact that you guys live in SoCal, I think learning Spanish is to your advantage anyways. And maybe at some point down the line, I mean, as a language guy, I personally support any language, and learning sign language is also very good. But just
I
I think I find that really amusing.
Yeah, I know bits and pieces of Spanish. I used to know a lot more. My preschool was Spanish immersion. We had a lot of au pairs and nannies who spoke Spanish with me, and I did take Spanish after school during elementary school. But now at this point, I've kind of forgotten a lot of it.
I mean, California, we learn ambiently Spanish anyways. Like, I spoke at my peak 16 languages. Now I'm down to like 4. So it's like
What?
Whoa.
That's a
it's
lot.
not as good as it used to be, but it's
Oh my God, even 4 is amazing.
I mean, I had a very high advantage of my parents both spoke like 4 or 5 languages before they came to this country.
Wow.
Right? So like I grew up in in a language heavy environment where we just spoke a lot of weird things. So I'm always a little like, you should learn Spanish because it's great, and Spanish will open the world and let you learn Chinese and all these other things. Like when I was in the Netherlands, I was able to start reading the signs in like 2 days, and it was really fun to be able to start just figuring out what things are doing, and like how to talk to people in very bad Dutch was very fun. I didn't learn any Dutch magic though, but that's okay. But man, it's so cool to watch you grow over time and like just see you develop as both magic player and as a person, because like, I mean, I don't know. I feel parental pride myself, just in terms of like, look, she's doing it and it's awesome, and you're better than me and it's great, and I love every part of it. Like, I mean, GP 2018, we glossed over it, but dude, the day that you got your first day 2, all of us were just losing our minds. We were running back and forth across the hall. It was celebration, tears. It was the whole thing.
I remember going right up on Olivia's shoulders and just doing an entire victory circle around the convention, and then seeing Marshall after he had just commentated on my match. And I don't know why I remember this, because just we stood next to Marshall, and me and Olivia put together were still shorter.
Right.
Granted, I was still pretty short. Like,
and then one of the other things many things about that day I remember, but I definitely remember basically when Dana made day 2, I was just overcome with, joy and emotion, and was so happy for her that I just started bawling my eyes out.
Yeah, I remember. I was
there. and what I remember, Shivam, about you is I remember speaking to you afterwards, and I don't know if this is your exact words, but it was the sentiment. You're like, I'm a dad too. I get it. Like you just like identified with that, and that actually meant a lot. Like I remember very clearly that sort of empathy in terms of like, I totally get it. I know how you're feeling.
That was 100% what I said. Yeah, I remember that moment, and I was just like, it's not even my kid, and I was just like feeling that. Oh yeah, the triumph of like, look, one of us made it. There's something about watching your child succeed that is just the greatest feeling in the world for parents, and I love that for you. And I was so stoked for you, and I was like, I can't wait to get there. And yeah, it was amazing, man. It was so good.
No, that was just phenomenal. And even it's interesting because over the last I guess starting about a little over a year ago, I've started to play in the competitive events as well.
Trying to follow. Finally shuffle a 60-card deck.
Yes, so Dana's like fully on her own.
I see you're following in her footsteps.
Yeah, trying to.
He loses to me.
We're both playing, but at every event, it's still like, I kind of want to do well, but I care more about how she's doing.
Right.
Like, and it's just, I think it's part of being a parent. Like I'm very invested in how she's doing in the event. I also want to do well, but there's that. And then one thing that's very exciting, so Dana is going to her 4th regional championship. She qualifies, no big deal, coming up in October. But I actually qualified as well at DreamHack Dallas. So it's actually the first regional championship where we're both going to be playing.
That's crazy.
Now, again, even there, I care much more about how she does in the regional championships than how I do.
It was really funny because during DreamHack Dallas during the regional championship, I actually had a fixed seat next to 4 of my other friends who were 16 and under. And my dad would keep checking in on us, asking our records, and he's like, well, I'm 1-1, but I care much more about how you guys are doing than what my record is. That's the event he qualified for the regional championship.
Yeah, I didn't even realize until much later in the event that I was in like contention to like qualify. I was like, wait, I actually like, have a good record. What's going on?
That's awesome. I mean, obviously the dream is to lose to her in the finals, right? Like,
yeah. Well, we were hoping we get paired up at some point. Even
if we get paired, I think it will be a crime if it's not on feature match.
Right? Like that. I don't think that's ever happened before. I think that would be amazing. I don't know. I'm sure that like somewhere Rich Hagon's ears are perking up right now. But yeah, man, it's been great to watch you both, and I love seeing you both at events. And
likewise,
we run into each other all the time.
Oh yeah,
it feels like, and it's always a joy to see you and hang out. So, but I think that's a good place for us to kind of bring this to a close, man. Are you going to be in? Obviously, you both be in Vegas, right?
Yeah,
and like Gen Con. So I guess I'll see you at Gen Con and then Vegas.
Are you going to MXPLA?
I am not, because that was the agreement I made with my family. It's like, you know what? I've traveled a lot this summer, and LA is going to be right after school starts for my son. So I'm like, I can't. Once school starts, can't do it. So I'm not going to go down there. Otherwise, oh God, all my friends are going to be there. It's going to suck. But you know what? Sometimes you got to be at home.
MXPLA is actually the weekend after I would have just finished my first week of high school.
The weekend you would have?
I will have. Yeah, I will have started my first week of high school.
I was gonna say, like, because the way you, because the grammar there made it sound like you were not going to high school as a result.
Oh no.
You're going, by the way, to your first day of high school.
And I'm like, dude,
mommy, it was really funny because I had an orthodontist appointment, and my mom like wanted to schedule the orthodontist appointment for 3:30 on my first day of school.
No,
and I'm like, I don't end school until 3:30.
No,
like,
that's not. You don't. No.
Oh, I didn't realize you started school that early because it's a lot earlier now.
Yeah, that would. Let me tell you, Command Fest is not worth missing school for.
I'm missing one day.
Yeah.
Because it's LA and it's easy.
It's fair. It's right there.
It's 2 hours away from us.
It's not even a flight. We just
and it's the beginning of school. You'll be fine. Just I hope you guys have told your teachers beforehand that you have a superstar in the making and that she's going to be taking a lot of trips.
That's if I know who my teachers are right now.
Fair.
Yeah, but what's really interesting, Shivam, about that is that in the past, yes, like the past, like I think 2 years specifically, because in middle school, when now she has, a bunch of different teachers she had, sure. I sent an email to all of her teachers explaining the situation. Like, all right, Dana, she's very big part of this community and she goes to an event and she'll be missing school, give them the whole deal. But now that it's high school, Dana's the one that needs to do that at the beginning of the year. So she'll be sending all of her teachers notes, right, Dana? At the beginning of the year, kind of explaining the situation up front.
Oh, that's going to be I'm sure they're going to be like, you're doing what?
That's how some of mine are feeling. So far, I have not had a teacher who has not liked what I do.
Yeah, they've been very supportive.
Been very supportive for the most part.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. When I start coughing, that's how you know my body is telling me the time for our talking is over. So thank you so much, both of you, for joining me today. I really, really appreciate it. I really had a great time. And we've been trying so hard for so many years to try to make this happen. Oh, man, I'm glad we finally got it over.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really cool, and I can't wait to see both of you again. But if folks wanted to find you or your streams or your content or whatever, where could they go?
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Dana Fischer MTG. Fischer spelled Fischer. And you can find my dad and I streaming on Twitch at Fisher Magic every Mondays and Fridays at 4 p.m. Pacific.
Cool. And as always, you can find me at Gear Reporter Gears. You can find this podcast anywhere podcasts are sold, or at YouTube every Tuesday, thanks to my editor, Dan. You can also find me on Shivam Wheeler Love Magic, where me and my buddy Ben talk about every single card in the history of the game ad nauseum until our fingers fall off. And then Fingers? Well, I mean, typing into Scryfall. And then also you can see me on the Chronicles of Dragonlance podcast, where me and my buddies sit and talk about Dragonlance novels because I like to talk into microphones. But remember, my friends, it's not magic without the gathering, and we'll see you next time.